Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, we finally have a matchup for the Western Conference Finals. This is so good, we had to do a bonus episode just to dive into this preview. Man, Shahnavaz, Minnesota Timberwolves.
What a game.
Against the Dallas Mavericks. You just tweeted the comeback kings face each other in the Western Conference Finals. So first of all, last time we talked to y'all, it was only a couple of days, not like the regular schedule. The Mavericks defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 6, a closeout game, and like I just said, comeback. First of all, before we even dive into the Western Conference Finals, Shahnavaz, what was your thoughts on the Game 6 closeout from the Mavericks over the Thunder?
Yeah, we knew Kyrie needed to step up, and that's exactly what he did. The first half obviously didn't go the way that the Mavericks wanted, and I think you tweeted it out that who's Tony Brothers related to in Oklahoma City, because that officiating was just bad. Absurd. I mean, just egregiously bad officiating by Tony Brothers and that crew. The first half didn't go like we planned, but this team has shown resiliency all year. We've said it countless times. Like, we couldn't see the older version of the Mavericks winning a game like that or being able to come back and win, and that's exactly what they did. And huge credit to the coaching staff. I mean, Jason Kidd, the adjustments going into the second half, starting to play more zone, and Shea's going to get his, and that's what he did. He's a mid-range assassin, and that's what he was doing. But they tried to force other players to beat them, and they couldn't. Oklahoma City just didn't have enough firepower to beat the Mavericks. And you talk about the game from Kyrie Irving, the leadership of Kyrie Irving, talking, the halftime, the speech he gave at halftime about, just play our game, let's do what we do. And that's exactly what Dallas did. Luka took over as well, a great game from Luka. And, even though he got teed up pretty early and was kind of on the precipice of another one, but, and then Derek Jones Jr., Derek Lively, I mean, PJ Washington not scoring until 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I mean, just the whole collective team effort. Jaden Hardy even off the bench, giving great minutes and making great passes, So all in all, just a complete team effort, something that we've seen, since the trade. And it still shocks me that this team is so cohesive and so just the chemistry of this team. Usually it takes a while to integrate new players, but everything's fit kind of seamlessly, and it seems like destiny for the Mavericks to be back in the spot. The second time they've made the conference finals in 3 years, which is the only team to do that. And Jason Kidd now is 5-0 in closeout games, and Kyrie Irving is 14-0 in closeout games. So just another gritty, gutsy performance. And I do want to say one thing: missing that free throw at the end was such a smart decision. I was watching the game with some friends, and that PJ Washington miss, to understand that Oklahoma City doesn't have a timeout, they can't get set, because 2.5 seconds is a lot of time to get set, and run a play on an inbound. So to miss that and force Jalen Williams into a heave that was defended better than the Max Strus 3 from earlier in the year, I think that was a huge clutch moment for the Mavericks, and now they're in the conference finals with a chance to get back to the finals for the first time since 2011.
Yeah, I thought you just brought up a great point with Max Strus. It just gave me flashbacks, and you could tell there was a moment of silence when he did miss it. But I was thinking like you. I thought that was a great move, so they don't get set up, and you just brought up Max Strus. You don't want get them time to have a running start, and it's the playoffs. Anything can happen in the playoffs, so you just don't want any type of chance for them to get set for a final shot, because 2.5 minutes is all you need is 0.4 seconds to get a shot up. So it was great to see them close them out, and you kind of were waiting for this moment to obviously the Clipper series was nice to see, but that was the number one team. That was the young guys in the playoffs. So you wanted to see the Mavericks pretty much just stomp on someone's necks and say, we're here. We're not waiting until next year. Our time is now.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about that last week. And you mentioned all the names that did great. So I don't even need to mention them. I was just happy to see a team collaborative effort. It wasn't just Kyrie or Luka just showing out. It was all those guys that you mentioned. I mean, Derrick Jones was amazing, 22 points. And Derek Lively, a double-double machine. He's only 20 years old. And PJ, a lot of people say, oh, he didn't score for 3 quarters and foul trouble, yada, yada. I mean, he pretty much won the game. If he
Yeah.
misses those free throws, they're in trouble. So it's just a team effort. Even Gafford, in his limited minutes, he really showed out in his minutes too. So I think the Mavericks did really well in their closeout game. You do not want to go into game 7. They, just like last series, they avoided game 7. They get more time to prep and rest for
Yeah.
the Minnesota Timberwolves. Because if they were on game 7, it would have been tomorrow. So they would have, and then they play Wednesday.
Yeah. You get like 3, basically, almost 3-4 days off now.
Yeah, and especially Luka. I mean, and Kyrie, you want them to rest as much as they can, especially Luka with Lou Dort. I mean, he just had 6 football games to go through. So now he gets Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah, it doesn't get easier.
Doesn't get easier at all. It gets tougher, more linked. And to be honest, just personally, a way better defender. He's not as physical. He's more skilled.
Yeah.
He's still physical, but not as physical as Lou Dort. And we'll get into the series, but just a great performance. And shout out to Jason Kidd. I tweeted this. He has the most Western Conference Finals appearances as a head coach in Dallas Mavericks history.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's coached the team for 3 seasons. That's mind-boggling. I mean, Jason Kidd has 2 appearances. Rick Carlisle 1. Avery Johnson 1. Don Nelson 1. It's kind of funny. Dirk had 3 appearances with 3 different coaches. And then John McLeod won back in the 80s with, the big 3 back in the 80s.
Yep.
It's just incredible to see this team. They beat a number 1 seed. Like I said last podcast, you beat an aging team that's kind of, had this nucleus that you might see. Maybe this is the last run, with the Utah Jazz. Yep. And then the Clippers, is PG leaving, so it's, and then you beat the young nucleus, the number 1 seed Phoenix Suns. They had all those young guys, and now you do that with the Thunder, and now you have a different whole team, because I was prepared for the Denver Nuggets.
I think we both
like
were.
A veteran championship team like the Warriors, but no.
Yeah. I think we both were thinking Denver. I mean, that game was a 30-point game at half, or 30-point game at halftime, right? I mean,
yeah.
Incredible comeback from Minnesota. I mean, you gotta give them props.
Yeah, what was your thoughts on that game before we get into Mavs Timberwolves?
I just, Denver all year has struggled, especially with the lack of depth, and I think that was a huge concern.
Miss Bruce Brown, Mr. Glue.
I think they missed Bruce Brown tremendously. Yeah, Bruce Brown was a key cog. Him, Jeff Green, veteran guys off the bench.
Jeff Green.
That they could bring in, and they got a bunch of young guys now. We barely saw Peyton Watson this series. Reggie Jackson played a little bit. They're kind of relying on Christian Braun to come in and carry some of the load, but he's not. He's more of a defender than a shooter or playmaker, and so really the ball's just in Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic's hands, and it felt like Aaron Gordon's not a 3-point shooter, and Minnesota clogs the paint really well. So you're kind of banking on Jamal Murray and Jokic, who couldn't hit a 3 to save his life until the second half when Denver desperately needed it. But it was shocking. I mean, Minnesota just chipped away and kept chipping away at that game, and even with Cat and Gobert in foul trouble, I mean, they still found a way to get back into it. they're the best defensive team in the league statistically for a reason.
Yeah,
I think they played a hell of a game, and I mean Anthony Edwards is going to be, if he's already a superstar, but he's going to be, a menace for the next decade and a half, in the
yeah.
Western Conference. So it's gonna be a tough series for sure.
Yeah, I was shocked. We were texting before this, and we were preparing for the Nuggets. I
Yeah,
mean, they were up so big. Like, we were taking notes for the Nuggets and the Mavericks, but it was shocking. And the way the Mavericks won too was shocking as well.
yeah,
So, like, you expect one team to win, and you're preparing for the next game, and you can't do that. You have to wait till the end of the game. That's why you can't give your analysis on in the second quarter. These days, no lead is
no lead's safe.
no lead is safe at
Yeah,
all. It's insane how teams come back so quick. And with the athleticism and the focus on defense, especially in the playoffs, you would think these regular season type comebacks would not happen, but they do in the playoffs. So
yeah,
that was insane to see, and I was shocked. I think you're right. The pieces that they had last year, it's going to take time to transition. I thought they did well for what they did. I mean, they lost two big pieces of their team and replaced them with two very young guys. And
yeah,
like you said, Watson, who I like, did not even
yeah.
play. I mean,
Good player.
he was really good in the regular season, but it's the playoffs, so the rotation cuts down. But like the Nuggets rotation, like really cut down.
I
It
mean, you're
was
playing
top
Justin
heavy.
Holiday. Like you're playing Justin Holiday meaningful minutes.
Yeah,
This guy was a
Watson can't
like,
get minutes over him. We
yeah.
we
I
we
mean,
got him
that's
last year.
I think there's a trust factor there with Mike Malone that
Yeah,
whether it's the fact that they are younger guys, and you're kind of veteran squad. It's a very similar situation to us wanting Jaden Hardy, to play at the end of the year, right? It was kind of like we're in a playoff push here, and you really, you know, can you get a young guy in there, who doesn't have a lot of experience when you're, a veteran squad, and you
yeah,
know, Jason Kidd kind of had to force the hand and bench Tim Hardaway Jr. because he's been, pretty awful, and Jaden Hardy's taking advantage of it. So props to him. I mean, who knows if Michael Malone would have given Peyton Watson that chance over Justin Holiday? Like, who knows what happens?
he should have. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you got to
it's
empty the
the
bag
playoffs.
in Game
It's about
7.
exactly. That's why I was so surprised. Um, and that's why I always say, shout out to Jason Kidd because he is doing good. We
Yep.
complain, we criticize him when he's doing bad, and he's done phenomenal things in the playoffs. I mean, his adjustments, just going on the fly. We already talked about the Clipper series, but just the Thunder series. Going to PJ right away at the beginning of games. Like he won 3 games where
Yeah.
he played outstanding offensively. He led the team in points one game, and he tied with Luka another game. And it was just phenomenal to see him, get his confidence. And then the switch to Jaden Hardy, that was out of left field. When I saw him come on the court that first game he played,
Shock.
I was looking at the fouls on the box score, because it was shocking, and he's making those type of moves, and he's making these adjustments in how the game plays, and I think it's incredible. And you saw what he opened up about his conversation with Kyrie in the third quarter to get him going.
Yeah.
When Kyrie was saying this is one of the hardest series and hardest things um he's had to do, and he was like, "You won a championship. You sure was that easy?" He was like, "No, man." But he was like, "I, things in life. Nothing in life comes easy, and we need you right now. We
Yeah.
need you to help us find the win." And he had 18 points in the half out of 22.
Vintage Kyrie in the
Vintage.
second half. Man, that was an incredible performance.
That was an incredible performance. So going into the Western Conference Finals, what everyone is tuned in about. So you have two teams. I mean, this is crazy to even think about. The Minnesota Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks, just from where these teams were last year. That's
Yeah.
crazy. They're in the Western Conference Finals. So they start on the road. The Mavs, for the third consecutive series, they start on the road. They start in Minnesota first 2 games. They lost game 1 in the last 2 series. Um, just overall, what are some things that you look forward to in this series? Now, we'll save game one for last final words, but just setting the teams together. Anthony Edwards said right after the game, like, just give us the game plan. Don't even let us guess. I mean,
Yeah.
he said my matchup's going to be Kyrie, so we're going to
Yep.
see how I do against him. Uh, so we already got a little bit of what's going to happen in this series. So obviously you expect McDaniels. That's an obvious given that he's going to go up against Kyrie. But in the regular season, the one game that they did play, I saw a lot of McDaniels on Kyrie and
Hmm.
Anthony Edwards on Luka, and they did play one time. They played three times during the season, but Luka and Kyrie together played Minnesota one time. They won
Hmm.
115-108. Dwight Powell was the starting center. Lively and Maxi Kleber was out.
Yep.
So this will be a fresh matchup. That was on January 7th. They did not play after the trade deadline. They did not have PJ Washington. They did not have a healthy Lively. They did not have Daniel Gafford. You know, so Kyrie was, he wasn't who he is now. He's 100, he's healthy.
Yeah.
So what is your thoughts on this matchup and how everything's going to play out?
Yeah. I mean, watching the game tonight, I mean, I was kind of swaying back and forth, of like who's going to be the better matchup for Dallas. Yeah, who the
Yeah.
Mavericks rather see. And it's kind of funny because early on I was like, oh, it's Minnesota. Then obviously in the second half you're like, I don't know about that. Looks like I think I'd rather play Denver at this point. Look, you're not going up against Nikola Jokic, right? Who's a 3-time MVP winner, so that's a plus. But Anthony
Yeah.
Edwards looks like he's going to get an MVP. Probably. I mean, he's going to be, if he's not already, he's going to be a top 5 player in the NBA. So you look back at the Utah series a couple of years ago when Luka, just played Gobert off the floor.
Yeah.
That wouldn't shock me again if that happens. But Minnesota's lengthy. Dallas has trouble with teams that have a lot of length. Minnesota gets out in transition really well. They like to speed it up. After missed shots, which we've seen Dallas struggle with after long rebounds. And I think they have a size advantage, over Dallas. I mean, I think the center matchup, I think favors Dallas. I think Gafford Lively can kind of cancel out Rudy Gobert. Karl-Anthony Towns obviously is bigger than PJ Washington. So that's going to be a really, really interesting matchup.
Mm.
I think the X factor is going to be Jaden McDaniels. I think Minnesota needs, Anthony Edwards is going to get his.
What about Naz Reid?
Naz Reid off the bench, and I think Dallas is really going to miss Maxi Kleber this series because Naz, Maxi's kind of that Naz Reid clone basically, right? They kind of do a lot of the same things defensively. They shoot the three really well.
That's a good point.
I think Maxi and Naz Reid would kind of cancel each other out there. Obviously, you've got Luka and Kyrie, which I think that gives Dallas the advantage when you've got two closers. You've got the veteran presence of a guy who's won a championship before, Jason Kidd, who's won a championship as an assistant coach and as a player, been in multiple finals as a player as well. And then Minnesota's got a leader in Mike Conley. So I think it's an even matchup. The length of Minnesota really scares me. Both teams are going to be great defensively. They're both two of the top defensive teams in the league.
Yeah.
It's going to be really, and I know we'll get to kind of game one later, but it's going to be really interesting to see how that first game plays out. It would not shock me if this series goes 7. I think it will. I just thinking about the matchups, I think it will go 7, and I think you're going to see a lot of low scoring games too. Like 98, 102, kind of. I think that game 6 against OKC, kind of in the teen, 100 and teens, I think is kind of an anomaly, right? I think we're going to see a lot of low scoring games with two really, really good defensive teams.
Yeah, and just going back on that Maxi comment. So Jason Kidd on May 5th said he'll be reevaluated in 3 weeks. So that would put it to Sunday on the 26th, and that is game 3. So obviously you expect not I mean, unless it's just best case scenario, you expect him to be hopefully getting cleared around that time and getting back into game shape, and maybe game 4, 28th, or game 5, on the 30th, um, with Maxi coming back. But, you would, like you said, you would need him early in the series because just the Naz Reid effect. But, I look at it on the flip side, uh, you know, PJ Washington, I think he's going to have a big series
Mhm.
because, we talked about Jaden McDaniels. I mean, we talked about McDaniels defending Luca and then Anthony Edwards guarding Kyrie. I think who's going to guard PJ Washington? I
Probably
mean,
Cat.
Towns?
I would assume Towns. Yeah.
So so PJ Washington needs to drive the ball
Yeah.
or
Get
shoot
him in
those
foul trouble.
threes.
Get him in
Yeah,
foul trouble. He's
exactly.
always in foul trouble.
Because that's the mismatch. I mean, obviously, Towns is an all-star, but I'm talking about defensively. I mean, he was guarding Jokic in
He's
this series. So you go out to PJ, who's on the corner three or the wing, and he's very good in the floater game, in the short game, in the post, mid-range. Like, I would do that matchup, and I would see how that goes to start the game. And like you said, get him in foul trouble or target Rudy, like you mentioned with Luca, and go back to the Utah Jazz film. Obviously, you're going to be looking at a lot of Timberwolves stuff, but just see how that worked out when you targeted Rudy in the playoffs. I would look at that, and then Kyrie. I mean, yeah, Anthony Edwards is a great player, and he's two-way. I would see if he's being overly aggressive
Mhm.
and try to get him in foul trouble, because Kyrie, he's a chess player. He's not checkers.
Yeah.
He's not going to do the same thing every game. Like he's going to read the game. He's going to evaluate how defenses are scheming against him and the team, and he's going to play chess. He's gonna drive past you one time, or he'll shoot the three the next time. He plays with your mind. It's crazy. So I'm excited to see that matchup, and
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the bigs, see how they play against Rudy, because I think every game in the Thunder series, whoever got the most rebounds won the game. So that's going to be very pivotal. You just said long rebounds and just the size of the Timberwolves, like Gafford, Lively, PJ, Derrick Jones Jr. with his athleticism, Luca.
Mhm.
Everyone's going to have to rebound the ball. That's going to be a big emphasis.
Yeah, and I think Dallas has an advantage in depth as well. I mean, outside you look at Minnesota's bench. I mean, other than
Yeah.
not reading Nikhil Alexander Walker, who is kind of hit or miss. He's really good in the Denver series. But
Defense is really good, but offense
his
is
defense is good, but his offense, he's really, really
where.
streaky. I mean, if you can bring,
Yeah,
if you're bringing in Lively, you're bringing in Josh Green, who, hustles. We've talked about him and kind of the improvements he's made, and Jaden Hardy. I mean, that's going to be a tough matchup for Hardy, just with the size of Minnesota. But if he can, if
yeah,
he can get switched on to a Mike Conley, or if something like that, I mean, I think Dallas has an advantage in terms of their depth, and I think the chemistry and for the Mavericks, the way that they've played the last 6 months since the trade deadline, um, puts them at an advantage. Having a guy like Kyrie as well, man. Like Minnesota is still,
yeah.
Minnesota's
Experience.
a relatively young team too, right outside of Conley and Gobert. You've got young pieces. They don't have anybody on that team with championship experience. Having that in the locker room, having that presence, I think is huge. The
Yeah,
emotional and psychological aspect of it plays a big part. In whether teams can advance or not, because you've got that calming presence, you've got that that leader there to say, hey, let's get back to our way of basketball. Let's get back to the way that we do things, and that'll take care of itself.
yeah. And then also you look at adjustments. Kid's been one of those coaches that game one he reads the game, and then game two he starts making different adjustments. Like
Yep.
he's pulling them left and right. So I'm curious how the Mavs, who know that they lose game ones, so, how did they start this series? Because this is not Denver. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the Mavericks are here for a reason, so they have a chance. But you should, even though they have a higher seed, the Thunder did too. Like
Yeah.
you should go in and be the experienced team, even though most of the guys are in their mid-20s. But like you mentioned, the championship experience with Kyrie and them, like you need to set the tone. Like make this not the norm of losing game one. And I just want to see the adjustments that kid does throughout the series. Like, does he go small? You know, you have
Yeah.
Gobert and you have Cat on the court. Do PJ at the 5 and just see how you play? You know, you can have Luca at the 4, just size wise. Obviously, he's the point guard, but you know, you could have when you bring in Josh Green, like, would you just have a 5 out? And I mean,
Yeah.
Gobert and Cat can't go out on the perimeter, you know, so and they're not going to just leave wide open threes. So that would be something to look forward to because kid, each season, I mean, each series, he has something that he just pulls out of nowhere,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
and
what the
it's
Mavericks
worked.
did against. Yeah, and that's what they did against Utah 2 years ago. You know, they
Hmm.
kind of adjusted and started playing 5 out and pulled Gobert out and let Luca go to work in the paint. And at that point, you know, Utah just couldn't play him anymore. You know, if
Hmm.
you're going to pull everyone out and Luca's just going to attack Rudy Gobert, you got to have switchable defenders, and Gobert's definitely not that. You know, um, eh, going I think Kid will go small in some instances. I just worry about the rebounding at that point because
Yeah,
Minnesota's got Cat
true.
and Gobert who can both rebound really well. So that's going to be the tough part. But this is going to be, I mean, it's going to be a fun series because this is two really, really gritty defensive teams that are
Yeah,
going up against each other. It's, you know, I can't wait for Wednesday night because it's going to be a bloodbath. I think.
and Lively's been phenomenal. I mean, you're
Yeah.
obviously
Oh,
going to see Gafford start because it's been working, and then Lively is the energy guy. He's the closer.
yep.
Uh, but you know, definitely when I think adjustments, I'm just thinking outside the box because Lively's too good to sit on the bench, you know,
Yeah.
and you need rebounding. But I'm just thinking, you know, against a Thunder team that rebounds are easy to get. Let's be honest here.
Hmm.
Um, you know, the Timberwolves, they're great at rebounding, the size that they have. So, you know, it's going to be an interesting matchup. Hopefully, Gafford and Lively, you know, they set the tone in physicality, and then also Derek Jones and PJ with their matchups. I mean, Derek Jones with Anthony Edwards. You expect PJ on Cat,
Hmm.
and just see how they do. So if those are their matchups, you got McDaniel's, probably Luca will be on, and then
Yeah. Kyrie on Mike Conley
Kyrie on
probably.
Conley, and then the bigs on Gobert. So that's going to be a nice matchup. So before we get
Yeah.
into what would you like to see in Game One, our final words, Shahnavaz, let's do predictions.
Ooh, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Let's do predictions.
Ooh, I knew you were going to ask that. Oh
Because
boy.
we were the Timberwolves just ruined our predictions for Western Conference Finals. We had the Nuggets and Mavs.
We're
So
ready for dinner,
now,
man.
uh,
I
so
think
what do you
I feel,
think?
man, my gut tells me
Mm,
Minnesota in 7. But there's
uh-huh.
something about this Mavericks team that they just the resiliency and the ability to adjust, and it just feels like destiny. Like it
Mm,
just feels different this year. You know, like it's kind of everyone's counting them out. Every, you know, national talking head is counting out Luca, is counting out Kyrie, is counting out the Mavericks. It's all about Anthony Edwards. It's all about, you know, these other players. And granted, Anthony Edwards is a phenomenal player and he's
yeah.
fun and he's likable and I have no problems with him. You know, the whole Shea is better than Luca argument, OKC, how everyone was riding OKC, and it's like, come on, guys, like watch the game. You know, um, something just feels different. I'm gonna say Mavericks in 7. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna. My
Mavericks
gut
in
tells me
7.
Minnesota. My gut tells me Minnesota, But I think when you've got two guys like Luka and Kyrie who can close out the game, I think that's going to be important. And I think Minnesota just doesn't have that yet. Anthony Edwards is
Mhm.
obviously a closer. Cat is not. Jaden McDaniels is not.
Yeah.
They haven't been in this position before. Dallas has been through the ringer. They've been to the conference finals before. Kyrie's won a chip. Kids won a chip. They've got guys that have the experience. And when you've got two closers at the end of the game who can either take over or get it to the open guy, that gives you an advantage. So give me Mavericks in 7.
Man, Mavericks in 7. So Mavericks in the finals. That's what you got.
Against
So
Boston, who should win in like 5 against the Pacers.
yeah, do we even have to? We don't even have to talk about that one. I'll say Celtics win in 6, just to give the fans a
Sure.
little cinema. Just a little small chance of something gonna happen. And then this is a tough one. Like just looking at all the things involved and how it's played thus far. I'm gonna go with experience. I'm gonna go with the Mavericks in 6.
6.
Uh,
Wow.
yeah,
Another closeout at
I'm just
home.
because, to be honest, I mean, well, not to be honest, y'all can go back to the podcast episode. I had the Nuggets beating the Mavericks in Game 7,
Yep.
um, in the prediction. So it's not like I'm just gonna choose Mavericks whenever, So, but something about this team, like they know their spots, they know their
Yeah.
roles, they know they're not selfish or like I need to get my shots up. No, like this team is selfless and they make adjustments. And like you said, this will probably be low scoring games. They've won in low scoring games.
Mm-hmm.
They've won without Kyrie hitting 25 points. They won without Luka hitting 30 points. They've won without the team making threes. So that just gives me confidence in the Mavericks winning this series. And also just the Rudy Gobert. He's so good defensively,
Mm-hmm.
but just he's just not a playoffs guy. He's more of the older, traditional era of bigs.
Yeah.
And I think the Mavs will play him off the court. I think you'll see a lot of Cat at the 5 in this series. And I just think that Mavericks have the experience. They have the 2 closers. You mentioned that. Kyrie and Luka, I mean, they're gonna be tight games. So I expect those
Yeah.
two to shine bright when the lights are the brightest. And I think that's fun for the stars. I think that's what they love. And this is a chance for Kyrie and Luka to get to the finals together in their first full season together. So I think
How
they will have
crazy would that be?
extra motivation for what you just said. I mean, for no one's talk about them. Luka with the MVP, Kyrie, just everything overall, and Team USA, just everything.
Yeah.
I think they have something to prove. I really think they have something to prove, and I don't think they're going to let a young pup like Anthony Edwards, who's extremely talented. I think they're just say, just wait your turn. Just wait your
Yeah.
turn. This is our
This
time to
is your
shine.
time. Yeah, that's right.
This is our time. So Mavericks in 6. That's what I have. You have Mavericks in 7. Hopefully our predictions are right this time. But
Yeah.
that is what it is officially. Since we can change them, since our initial predictions did not work out. So, Shahnavaz, final words in this bonus episode. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, follow us on social media. What would you like to see in Game 1 Wednesday in
Wednesday
Minnesota?
night.
Timberwolves won the first 2 games of both series. They swept the Suns, but they won the first 2 games against the Nuggets. So, what would you like to see in Game 1?
Game 1, I want to see the same aggressiveness that Dallas has played with. I know they've lost both game 1s, against the Clippers and against the Thunder.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take too much stock into a Minnesota win on Wednesday night. In fact, I think Dallas plays better off a loss. I think they're undefeated off a loss in the postseason. So,
Yeah.
I want them to just, test the waters, man. Like, do whatever you did against the Clippers and Thunder. Like, play your game, but see what Minnesota's doing, right? And Kid's done a phenomenal job at that, to be able to kind of come back and game plan for the way that they're playing their game. So Dallas just has to go out there, be themselves. Don't let Minnesota, change the way that you play. Don't let them, force you into any errors or anything like that. Stay out of foul trouble. Keep the turnovers to a minimum and just play your game. That's it.
Yeah, that's a good points. I would like to see. I already mentioned. I would like to see PJ, start aggressive in the first quarter, either shooting or scoring. Just take them off the rhythm, because they're gonna go hard at Luka and Kyrie, and I'm excited to see that, because
Yeah.
they're gonna go man up. I mean, you have and McDaniels, you would expect them to go man up, and then just see how they defend. But obviously they're gonna double, because Luka and Kyrie love 1-on-1. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
please do that, or they're gonna do the pick and roll and target Rudy. But I just want to see PJ start off hot, and Derek Jones Jr. I want to see them both start out hot from the three, and
Yeah.
then that will get the whole team going, and it'll be hard to stop them, because you got to stop the threes and the drives with Derek Jones Jr. and PJ. Then you got the big lob threat with the big guys Gaff and Lively, and then you got two of the best scorers in the world. So that's going to be hard to stop, but they have the number one defense, so let them
Yeah.
play. This is what the playoffs are for. So that's what I want to see in game one. Like you said, I'm not worried if they lose game one, because they lost game one in both series. But I want to see them come back to Dallas at least a split.
Yeah,
You can't
definitely.
go
It's got to be a split.
0-2.
Yeah.
You can't go 0-2. So, all right, this is a bonus episode. We just wanted to talk about this series because the Mavericks are in the Western Conference Finals
Ooh.
against the
Let
Timberwolves.
Let's also not
Shahnavaz.
forget what a great Saturday. The Mavericks and the Stars on the same day both go to the
Yeah,
Western Conference Finals, and we're about 3 weeks away from potentially having the American Airlines Center host a finals game every night for 2 weeks.
that will be insane. That will
Can
be
you
insane.
imagine?
It's
Can you
already
imagine?
insane.
Yeah.
We're not going to get any sleep. Every game is going to be either the Mavs or Stars.
Yep.
That's
It's going to
crazy.
be awesome.
It's going to be awesome, and hopefully it's going to be awesome for the Dallas Mavericks. All right, so everyone, thanks for tuning in. Please, once again, like and subscribe. Follow us on social. You see our usernames. So thanks for tuning in. And to the bonus episode previewing the Mavericks versus the Timberwolves. Goodbye, everyone.